Hi everyone. I said on I think Facebook and Instagram that I was gonna do a video kind of as a recap of everything that's happened in the last year and a half, almost 2 years, that has brought me to the point that I am at now. Yeah, it's a lot, and I'm not really sure where. I'm gonna post this to YouTube because it's gonna be long, and I'm not really sure where I want to go on YouTube. I've wanted to do it for a long time. I've made some videos here and there. I've done poetry videos. I've done ballet related videos. I'm not sure where I want to go with it. Originally, there was this idea of writing a memoir about everything that's happened and calling it Year of the Goat, for those who already know what I'm talking about, because there have been goats involved. That might just be, there's been so much more that's happened than just that. I like the idea of like journey to the center of something, because clearly I'm on a journey to the center of something and I have no idea where I'm gonna end up because it just keeps coming. The contractor came today to pick up the check for the baseboards and to discuss the roof more. It's looking like the plan for the roof had to be altered to take into account the ventilation problem, because the ceiling is ripped out in the upstairs bedroom right now, and we can address the ventilation problem in there because the ceiling is ripped out. The ceiling around the rest of the upstairs is not ripped out, and the ventilation issue exists under the entire roof, so it has to be addressed without ripping out the ceiling. So he had to come up with a plan to address it, the cost of that, the labor involved, and so it brought the cost of the total of doing the roof and putting the ceiling back in the upstairs bedroom and re-insulating it and all of that. It's gonna be somewhere just over $3,000, or no, $3,000, 13 grand, not three. I wish it was only $3,000, $13,000 and change. I have only part of that I can cover from my savings, and the rest I have to figure out what I'm gonna do. I did apply for a program last night. There are a lot of programs in this area and in the state that, and even in the federal government, where they help low-income homeowners take care of repairs. A lot of them I don't qualify for because I make this much above the income limit. The income limit on most of them is 200% of the federal poverty line, the federal poverty level, which puts the cap at about $25,000 a year and some change, and I make about $28,000 a year. So I'm just above the cap. I am in a gap. I am constantly in an income gap. My health insurance is always in an income gap where I'm between being able to have assistance and not being able to have assistance, but not being able to afford the health insurance. It's the same with energy assistance, where like I'm in that gap where I make just too much to not get energy assistance, but not enough to cover the energy bills that happen in the winter up here in upstate New York. This is a gap that exists in this country, and it is very real. It is very unfair. There are a lot of working class people who work really, really hard and are stuck in this gap and cannot get assistance unless they pop out like 7 kids, or unless they are, end up somehow on disability, get injured, whatever, or, whatever else would qualify you beyond your income for assistance. If you're a veteran, if you're elderly, that kind of thing. So as a single working person, I don't make enough to afford the cost of living. I don't make enough to cover certain expenses, and I also make too much to get assistance. A friend of mine, the person that I'm currently living with, found a program last night that's a private program, and it is local, and their income limit is above what I make. So I qualify. I filled out a pre-application last night, sent it in, and actually I told my contractor about it, and he said he actually potentially qualifies to work with them because they had contacted him a couple of years ago to put in a pre-application process to work with them on helping to rehab people's homes who are low income. But he never heard back from them afterward. So we're gonna give them about a week to get back to me. If they don't get back to me, I'm gonna be calling them and be like, hey. If I can't get the assistance I need from them, I have to figure out a plan going forward. So the plan from the contractor is for me to pay for the materials, and then the labor will be put onto a payment plan. I make so little, comparatively to, the median, and even the median income in this state. It would take me probably 5 or more years to pay that off. I have another plan up my sleeve to get a little bit extra that could help. I would be flat, entirely broke at the end of it, but at least it would be done and I wouldn't have to be in debt, number one, and I wouldn't have to worry about my roof for 20 years. And the property value would go up, and that would benefit me in the end. And yes, this is an immediate need. The roof is not in the best shape, and the ventilation issue caused black mold. Not just in the insulation and under the roof side, but under some ceiling panels that were put up incorrectly by the previous owner and caused moisture to get trapped underneath from the humidity in the house over the 4 years that it sat vacant, and black mold formed on the drywall, and the drywall had to be ripped out. Right now I'm currently waiting. I have some mold in the basement on the wall leading down to the basement. It's brown mold. I have sprayed it with, I sprayed it a few days ago with vinegar, and today I sprayed it with a fungicide that's not supposed to be on drywall, but it's a really crappy drywall that will have to be replaced someday anyway, so I really don't care if it dissolves the top layer of it. But I'm waiting for it to dry, and then I have to go scrub that off. I spent a lot longer talking about this than I had planned. But what I had wanted to talk about in this video is what the hell got me here. So those who follow me on Instagram and my friends on Facebook know what's gone on. Instagram not as much. I didn't talk about it as much as I did on Facebook. But so in the spring of 2019, I was living in a garage apartment on the property I grew up on. I had been living there for 5 years. My mother had owned the property, and then a year before that, before August 2019, in August 2018, she sold it to our handyman, and he put me on a lease, and I was paying inexpensive rent because I'd been living there 5 years. It had been our property, and the place needed a lot of work. My understanding was that we would re-sign in a year, and maybe the rent would go up a little bit year to year. I mean, that's normal. I've experienced that in other apartments I've lived in. Every year the rent goes up by a little bit. I contacted him in the spring about re-signing the lease, and he wanted ultimately a 70% rent increase, which would have been beyond anything I could ever afford. And that was without having done any of the work. And there were some health hazards and safety hazards that existed there. So I had to scramble and try to find a place to live. And all I could afford were rooms to rent. And so I started reaching out on Facebook Marketplace and on Craigslist, and friends of friends of friends of friends trying to find me somewhere to go. Probably about 20 or more living situations either fell through, didn't pan out, or were scams. Most of the ones that fell through. One of the ones I was really, really looking forward to, and it was this wonderful woman, I'm friends with her on Facebook. It fell through because her benefits were at risk if she rented a room and had more income, and so it would have been a problem and created issues for her, and she needed the health benefits she has. She's a cancer survivor. She needed her health benefits that she gets from the government, and if she had rented to me, she could have lost that. And so that couldn't happen. And then the next one couldn't happen because the woman's 16-year-old daughter didn't want her to rent a room in their house. They hadn't even met me yet. And things like that would happen. And then other ones were, either scams or just, people who didn't really want to rent their room but wanted to but didn't want to. This one guy that was hitting on me like every time I came to look at it, or the first time I came to look at it, he hit on me afterward. And then when I came back around to it, I went there and he was like on some kind of drugs. He was high or something, I don't know. He was being very strange, and I got out of there as quickly as I could. I came within 2 weeks of becoming homeless. I finally found a place with somebody that shops where I work and is a friend of a former friend. I thought it was going to work out. I lived there for 5 months. It was a nice place to live, but he was cheating me out of extra money by charging me for pet rent and acting like, this is what the apartment complex wants, but he didn't tell the apartment complex about me or my dog. And so my dog was living there illegally, and he was not passing pet rent on to the management, so he was pocketing the extra money. It was $50 a month extra. So in total, it was another $250. He was being very controlling about how I do my dishes and how I do my laundry, and he would get really irritated if there were 3 dishes in the sink. Meanwhile, I would get up in the morning and his dishes would be on the floor. He didn't like the dishes drying on the sink. He basically didn't want to feel like somebody else was also living there. He wanted it to feel like nobody else was living there, even though, he wanted the money and he wanted the roommate and whatever, and then in the end he told me I wasn't looking for a roommate. I did it as a favor and all this stuff, and it was just this, big mess. And then he tried to not give me my security deposit back and whatever. And he told me I broke the door, which I didn't even touch the fucking door. Excuse my French. But it was just a crappy situation. We just did not work as roommates, and he was being a jerk a lot of the time. And he was, So these people that used to work where I work offered to let me caretake their house. They had moved an hour and a half south of here, and they offered to let me caretake/rent their house very cheaply. So I jumped on it, and it also meant I could get all of my belongings out of storage. So I moved in there January 1st of 2020, yeah. And immediately it was a nightmare. They would not let me use the wood stove, and they wanted me keeping the heat really, really low because they were paying the bill, and it was all electric heat, which means the first bill showed up and I was keeping the house probably around 70, which is room temperature. The first bill showed up, it was over $400. So they told me to turn the heat down, and the house wouldn't even stay. If it was set at 70, it would be 60. So because it had a lot of places that would steal the heat that weren't heated, and the heat would flow into those places, and I had to hang a blanket in front of the door in order to keep the heat in. So I had to turn the heat down, and the house was utterly fucking freezing. The floors were like ice, every surface was like ice. My honey was completely crystallized. It was 50 to 60 degrees in the house. And I was having to do the shoveling, which was part of the deal, was caretaking and shoveling. And they had this huge gravel driveway up an enormous hill. And I was having to shovel that. The first one wasn't so bad. We had a dusting. It was easy. The next one we had about 9 inches or something like that. And it took, I think it was 9 inches. I don't remember, but there was one where it took 6 hours over the course of 3 days to clear it. And then we had one snow where it snowed every day for 5 days in a row, freezing rain. I was out there every single day shoveling and shoveling and pushing snow and breaking my body. It was below zero, and like killing myself trying to shovel. And even he said, like, you don't even have to do the whole thing, just do the bottom U and a little path up the driveway for yourself to get to the house. The bottom U was the worst because it took the longest, and especially because it was the heaviest snow where the plow had gone by. So I was basically out there for hours and hours and hours in the freezing cold, killing myself. And you know, one day a plow came by and took pity on me and finished plowing it out. I was out in the freezing rain, soaked, drenched through, freezing. Eventually I had to hire a plow. A friend found another friend who's a private plow, and he charged me $25 per plow, and he took care of it for me. So I thought, okay, I'm out of the woods with that. And I was planning to try and find a roommate to fully rent the house, and I had told them that. Then in the spring, when COVID started happening, right after the lockdown started, I started finding severed goat heads in the trees. So the first one, when I had moved in, I had seen something in the tree in the backyard, and I thought that it was a bee's nest, like an old wasp's nest, because I could just see the shape. And it was kind of brown, and there was snow, and so it looked like it was an old wasp's nest in the tree. And I was like, okay, in the spring I gotta get that down. Come spring, I'm on my way to work. I look out the window in the dining room at that tree, and that wasp's nest had horns on it. And I lost it. I went out there, and it was a rotting, severed head of a goat. And I texted the landlord, and I'm like, what the hell? And he didn't respond. And then he came there, and I was like, what the hell? And he's like, well, it's our goat, and it's how we honor our goats or something. And he's like, do you want me to get rid of it? I said, yes. And so I come back to the house later that night. It's not there. But then I see that a tarp has moved, and I get concerned that he put it under the tarp. So I go out and I pull the tarp. It's not there, but then I look up and across the driveway, and I can see something on another tree. And I go across the driveway, and there's another one. And then at one point, and my friend came to remove that one, and she took it to a local farmer who was going to bury it in their cattle fields where they bury their livestock that passes away. But then I just kept finding them. I found, in the old goat pen, I found 3 of them. There were 2 up at the top and 1 in the corner, and I ended up finding 5 of them. And then I started talking to the neighbor across the street who is related to him, and there's this big feud between them, and they're not allowed on each other's properties, and they were telling me horror stories about these people and how they, abused their animals and their goats, and, stole from them and would sneak on their property and pull pranks and steal from them. And so I started trying to find a place to live. I tried to find an apartment, and then people started trying to convince me to buy a house, and so I got in touch with a realtor. And then come May, end of April, I was told that they had rented it out from under me, and I had to be out at the end of May. So I had a month to find a place to live. He came to do work on the place in May, and basically all hell broke loose. He started bullying me. It became ridiculous, and in the end, after several things went down, one morning I was trying to take a shower after I was locked in my room for several hours while he and his brother were parading through the house and whatever. I go in the bathroom, I'm completely naked, about to get in the shower, and the fire alarm goes off, the smoke alarm goes off. And I hear him running up the stairs and into the bedroom, and he's just sawing wood and working on what he's working on in the bedroom and ignoring the smoke alarm. So I throw all my clothes back on, and I go out, and the house is full of wood smoke. And the night before he had come and he stayed overnight at the house, and he had lit the wood stove, and it was nice and toasty warm. And he was throwing it in my face that I wasn't allowed to use the wood stove and be warm. So the house is full of smoke. I grab the dog, I run outside, I call the police. And this is like multiple times I had to call the police. They come out, my friend shows up, we start moving my stuff out immediately. I had packed a bunch of it the night before. We start moving it to her basement. I said my ex is gonna come and help me with his truck and move my furniture, and then I'm told later in the day, after the police are gone, he says he's not allowed on the property unless I'm here and all this stuff. And then when we finally come back, he's parked his, well, number one, he parked his car across the driveway for several days so we couldn't get up the driveway. And the neighbor was keeping watch, seeing what the hell he was doing. And then we show up there when he's finally gone, and he rigged the locks so we couldn't get into the house. And he was basically holding my furniture hostage in the house. And I had to get the sheriff's office involved again. We finally had a day where he would show up and we would get the stuff. And I called the police, and the police were gonna be there. So I showed up there. It was me and George and his truck and his two neighbors, like these two guys and their truck, and the cops. And we were prepared, and his family are sitting across the street on their porch waiting and wanting to watch what's gonna happen, because, you know, it's like they're waiting for the shit to go down. So basically, we had like very little amount of time before it started storming, and we got all the trucks loaded up with almost everything we could get, and we rolled out, and within moments of rolling out, the storm started. And so apparently, like, there were a couple tornadoes that touched down in local surrounding areas. But so we're driving down the road, the tarps are flying off the trucks, everything's getting drenched. We have to stop at Cumberland Farms underneath the protective thing. We rearrange the tarps, and we finally go to my friend's basement, put everything in the basement. We go back to get the last load of stuff, and 2 big trees had fallen across the driveway. And according to the neighbor, she said it happened like the second after we rolled out. And she's like, it was amazing to see those big trees uproot over that driveway moments after you pulled out. Had we been just like a couple minutes longer, it would have fallen on the neighbor's truck, and people would have gotten injured or killed. Like moments after rolling out of there, after all of that crap that happened, those trees uprooted and fell across the driveway. So it was like instant karma. So I, at that time, after I got out of there, was staying in this little cottage that was built in the 1920s right next to the Kateros River. It's gorgeous. I wish it was mine. Like, I wish I could grow old there. I miss it so much. I got to spend 2 weeks there. It was only supposed to be a couple days. It ended up being a couple weeks while the room was being made ready at George's house. So then eventually I moved in there, and the plan was to buy a house or find an apartment. And it wasn't supposed to turn into a year-long thing. It's been almost a year. Next month it'll be a year. I am clearly, yes, I bought a house, but I am living there still because of the issues that have come up in this house. But while I was living there, so a couple months in, I had to get a storage unit to move all my stuff from my friend's basement into storage, because she couldn't keep it there long term because there's humidity issues in the basement. It's not a secure place to keep my stuff. So I go in August. I had moved it there in May. I go in August to move it all to storage. I had been there the month before to get some dishes and things. Everything was there. Everything was fine. Go in August. All of my clothes and shoes had been stolen. So it turns out in the end it was her neighbor. Her neighbor was a drug addict, and she was angry with me because I wouldn't let her borrow my vacuum, and so she stole all of my clothes and shoes and a bunch of other stuff that, like, slowly over time I've realized as I've unpacked boxes what's missing. It was about $3,000 worth of my belongings. So I filed a police report. She ended up getting arrested eventually once they caught her boyfriend on a probation violation. And she had hidden all my stuff they found only 3 items of mine in there. It's either she hid it or they didn't search thoroughly enough. My friend said they were only there for about an hour, and she had a ton of stuff in that apartment. And I'm pretty sure, based on what I've seen her selling online, she's stealing from other people. She's got some really high-end stuff she's trying to sell, like Gucci and Prada, and some, laptop that's not likely hers. So that happened. The police are still holding my belongings that they found. They found like 3 things that were mine. And then after she was released, my belongings started showing up on Mercari and Poshmark. And I notified them, and the police wouldn't do anything about it. And, each time she put it up, they were like, it's in the court's hands now. The DA will reach out to you about restitution. It's been 8 months. The DA has not called. I've heard some stuff that she said some crazy stuff about her record being expunged and all this shit, which isn't likely true. I don't know if she's just dodging court, but the police still have my belongings. I have not been contacted about restitution. I've been told by an attorney I should contact Victim Services in Albany, which I'm planning to eventually do once things at the house settle down and I can get my head on straight. But, so that happened. And then all that time I've been just trying to find a house, and I found this house eventually. I went through many different houses and, further out areas, out near Hebron. It's like 45 minutes away. I looked at houses in Johnstown, also 45 minutes away. All of these would add like over an hour to drive to Ballet. Finally, this house had been on the market for a long time. I'd seen it. I'd avoided it. I had avoided it because the pictures of it were really just like dank and whatever. They were like wintertime pictures. It wasn't very good looking. Eventually they updated the pictures to better pictures, and the price started dropping. It was a foreclosure and the price started dropping significantly. So we looked at it, put in, I had a mason come look at the foundation, see if it was a structural problem. No, it was fine. Put in an offer under a USDA loan. They rejected it because they would have to have dealt with the garage in the back, which has a rotted roof. So we went and looked at another house out in Galway, put in an offer on that. They countered too high. Finally, this house dropped again by another 10 grand. I went in at 10 grand below that. They came back about 3 grand above my offer, and we accepted. The inspection happened the day after we got 3 feet of snow. It was supposed to happen the day we got 3 feet of snow, but it had to be rescheduled. So a lot of the inspection was like obstructed by snow. We showed up here and they told us that they were gonna shovel it out and plow it out. They didn't, and the inspector had to take a little car shovel and shovel a path to the house for himself. He couldn't see the roof. He had seen it the day before when he came for a water sample. There was a notable sag in the roof. I was informed by many people it was likely from age and settling. Nope. Yeah, so there was a lot that didn't get seen in the inspection because it was either obstructed or it was covered over and concealed. The black mold upstairs was concealed under the wood panels, and they were just saying, why didn't your inspector find that? Because he would have to rip out the ceiling to find it. You can't really do that when you're inspecting a house. You can't just rip things down. So a lot of unforeseen things, highly costly things have come up that were unexpected and are not covered by insurance that I have to cover and take care of. And the roof is immediate need. It is something that I need to address now so it doesn't get worse, so that mold spores don't continue to form under there and threaten my health. I am currently still not living here. I'm hoping soon I will be able to. But anyway, that's the overview of everything that happened. It's just been one thing after the next. It's been a major trip. And COVID has made it both harder and easier. It made it financially easier because of the stimulus checks. For a while I couldn't do ballet, and I got to save a bunch of money because I was living with George. I got to save, my paychecks in order to put towards my house, which was really helpful. It's also made things emotionally very difficult because I'm an essential worker and I deal with abuse from the customers on a daily basis, a lot of times to do with masks. But it's just, you know, my anxiety has been very bad in the last 2 years since I left home. Like, since I left, the anxiety has just gotten worse and worse and worse, where I like wake up sick to my stomach, wake up shaking, wake up nervous, and then have ruminating thoughts and worry and worry and worry and worry and worry and breakdown. And I've been having constant breakdowns. You know, like last week I had to leave early one day because I got into altercations with customers about masks and had breakdowns. I've had breakdowns in ballet class. You know, there's so much emotionally on top of me, and not even just everything that's happened, everything less from the last 7 to 10 years is still on me emotionally. A lot of things that happened with other people, and it's just a lot. And the last 2 years have been very heavy and very difficult, and this kind of journey leading somewhere, and I'm not really sure if it's leading to good things or more crazy things, or I don't know how much more I'm gonna have to get through till I can get to a place of peace and contentment and just level. Everything just kind of like levels out, and I can get back to my life the way I want it to be, you know? It's complicated. It's been crazy. But, so that's what's gone on. And this video is over 30 minutes long, so I should stop it here. I am going to still think about what I want to do with my YouTube channel. I don't know if I want to go in a mental health direction. I don't know if I want to go in a like ballet-centered direction. I'm weird about videotaping myself doing ballet. I get really self-conscious about it. But I'm not really sure. It might be a channel of lots of different things. And at some point I will have to do a leotard collection, and part of my leotard collection is actually going to be sold because I have way too many leotards. A lot of them I'm not wearing, and they don't really work for me. Like, I got them thinking they were going to look good, and then they just don't fit the way I want them to fit. And so the ones that are not anything I think I'll ever wear again, I will be selling on Poshmark. But once everything's moved over here, I can then make that video. I've been promising it for like 2 years. But yeah, that's what's happening. I have to figure out replacing my roof and everything. And yeah. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing good, staying safe. I hope you're healthy, happy. So take care, everybody. I'll see you in another video.